In the marble halls of power, glory fades slowly, but fear lingers forever. Welcome to our third episode of Death of Tiberius Becomes Emperor. Let's begin our new episode. A silent empire. By AD 32, Rome was an empire that seemed eternal. The roads stretched across continents. The grain fleets from Egypt arrived on schedule. The Senate still met, though mostly to echo the emperor's letters. But beneath that polished surface, Rome had become a city of unease. The memory of Sejanus, once the mighty Praetorian prefect, still haunted the people. His fall had been followed by brutal purges, trials and denunciations. Families whispered behind closed doors. Tiberius, now in his 70s, ruled from the island of Capri, remote, steep, and surrounded by blue sea. There, in a cluster of luxurious villas, he retreated from the world he could no longer trust. The Senate still called him princeps, the first citizen, but his isolation had made him more myth than man. Every letter that arrived from Capri was read with trembling hands. A few words of imperial displeasure could end a life. Rome had never seen an emperor like him, distant, invisible, omnipresent. The emperor in exile. Contemporary historians painted vivid and sometimes cruel pictures of Tiberius on Capri. Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio wrote that he indulged in strange vices and grew paranoid, surrounding himself with astrologers, spies, and flatterers. They called him a monster, a tyrant hiding behind marble walls. But reality, as always, was more complicated. Tiberius was a scholar, a soldier, a man of austere habits. He read philosophy, wrote poetry, and studied the works of Greek historians. His retreat was not merely born of cruelty, it was exhaustion. He had spent his life in the service of an ideal, Rome's stability. But to maintain that stability, he had sacrificed nearly everything human within himself. His retreat to Capri was less a reign of terror than a man's final attempt to find peace in a world that refused to offer it. Still, his presence loomed large. Governors hesitated to act without imperial approval. The Senate competed to interpret his silences. And through his letters, he ruled with precision that could both terrify and protect. The empire's machine. Despite his seclusion, the Roman government under Tiberius functioned with remarkable efficiency. He tightened the empire's finances, balanced the treasury, and curbed unnecessary public spending. The roads and aqueducts remained in good repair. The provinces were governed with less corruption than under Augustus. Tiberius avoided reckless wars, preferring diplomacy to bloodshed. When revolts broke out in Africa or Parthia threatened in the east, he responded with strategy, not spectacle. He was, by every administrative measure, a successful ruler, though few loved him for it. In his absence, the myth of Augustus continued to grow, shining brighter in contrast to Tiberius's cold efficiency. The Senate, deprived of Augustus's warmth and theatrical gestures, resented Tiberius's restraint. He denied them the grand games and festivals they craved. He refused to be worshipped in life. For the Romans, who adored the illusion of divine monarchy, such restraint felt almost ungrateful. The emperor who wanted only order gave them silence, and they hated him for it. The heir in waiting. Caligula. While Tiberius withdrew from Rome, a new figure began to capture attention. Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, better known to history as Caligula, the little boots. He was the son of Germanicus, the beloved general whose death had once stirred the empire to grief. As a boy, Caligula had lived among soldiers, wearing a miniature uniform that earned him his affectionate nickname. Now grown, he carried the legacy of Augustus and Germanicus in his blood, and the burden of suspicion in Tiberius's gaze. After the death of Tiberius's son Drusus, Caligula became a natural heir. But the emperor was cautious. He had seen how adoration turned men into threats. So he brought Caligula to Capri. For 6 years, the young man lived under the watchful eyes of Tiberius and his advisors. Some sources claimed it was mentorship, others imprisonment. Tacitus hinted that Tiberius told Caligula, "I am nursing a serpent for the Roman people." If true, it was prophecy. For now, Caligula learned the ways of power, its patience, its cruelty, and its solitude. The fading light of Tiberius. By AD 36, age had begun to erode even Tiberius's legendary self-control. His letters grew shorter, his tone more bitter. He mourned the loss of his old friends, his son, and his faith in humanity. The Senate, sensing the approaching end, began to maneuver for position. Rumors of succession filled Rome. Would it be Caligula, the charming but unpredictable youth, or Tiberius Gemellus, the emperor's young grandson? Tiberius, as always, refused to make things simple. He named them both as joint heirs, one by blood, one by adoption, and left the future to fate. The death of the emperor. In March AD 37, Tiberius left Capri for the mainland. He traveled slowly, stopping at Misenum near the Bay of Naples, a place not far from where Augustus had died 23 years earlier. There, in the villa of Lucius Piso, he fell ill. Suetonius recounts that the emperor's health declined suddenly. His physicians feared the worst, and attendants prepared for the end. At one point, believing him dead, they began to remove his signet ring, symbol of imperial authority. But Tiberius opened his eyes. According to the legend, he spoke only a few words. "Why do you hurry?" Moments later, his heart stopped for good. He was 78 years old. His body was cremated quietly, his ashes placed in the mausoleum of Augustus in Rome, the same resting place as the man whose shadow had followed him all his life. The question of legacy. When news reached Rome, the Senate's reaction was telling. There were tears from some, relief from others. One senator reportedly shouted, "To the Tiber with Tiberius!" a cruel pun that captured how despised he had become. Yet, as with many rulers, judgment softened with time. For all his secrecy and cruelty, Tiberius had preserved the empire intact. He had balanced its finances, secured its borders, and strengthened its institutions. In the centuries to come, historians would struggle to define him. Was he the tyrant Tacitus described? A suspicious, brooding despot who ruled through terror? Or was he a misunderstood realist, the necessary counterweight to Augustus's idealism? The truth likely lay between those extremes. Tiberius had been the first man to inherit absolute power and survive it. His rule tested the empire's capacity for continuity. It proved that Rome could outlive its founders. But it also showed how absolute power consumes those who wield it. The empire after Tiberius. Upon his death, Caligula was hailed as emperor. The city erupted in celebration. People flooded the streets, thanking the gods that the old monster was gone. But in their joy they forgot the lessons of Tiberius. Within months, Caligula's reign turned from promise to horror. He spent the empire's surplus on games, spectacles, and personal extravagance. He revived the trials, executed senators, and demanded divine honors. Rome had longed for warmth and charisma, and got chaos instead. In hindsight, even Tiberius's critics began to see his cold logic as wisdom. He had ruled not to be loved, but to preserve. And in that, he had succeeded where many would fail. The man behind the mask. What made Tiberius such a paradox was his humanity, buried beneath the armor of control. He was a man who loved deeply, but trusted no one, who valued reason, but was haunted by emotion. His early letters show wit and compassion, his later decrees, paranoia and despair. The transformation was not sudden, it was the slow corrosion of loneliness. Augustus had ruled surrounded by friends, family, and public adoration. Tiberius ruled alone, watched by spies and haunted by ghosts. He once wrote, "Men pray for power, but power only reveals the truth of men." In the truth of Tiberius, Rome saw the cost of empire, the loneliness at the top of the world. The shadow and the legacy. 2 generations after his death, the historian Velleius Paterculus, who had served under him, wrote, "He was a man of moderation in his prosperity, of greatness in his labors, and of patience in adversity." That might be the most balanced epitaph for the man history could never decide whether to fear or admire. Tiberius's reign was not an age of conquest, but of consolidation, not an era of spectacle, but of structure. He had taken an empire built by genius and turned it into a system that could endure mediocrity. He gave Rome bureaucracy instead of charisma, and in doing so gave it centuries of stability. Even his harshness had a strange utility. The empire learned that fear, while corrosive, was a stronger glue than flattery. In the end, he did not fail as a ruler. He failed as a man trying to be loved. Apologue. The emperor who taught Rome to endure. On Capri, the ruins of his villa still overlook the sea. Travelers say that at sunset, when the cliffs turn gold, one can almost imagine the old emperor standing there, silent, watching the horizon. He had seen the world's greatest empire born and ensured it would not die with its creator. Augustus had been the architect of empire. Tiberius was its engineer. Between them, they forged the blueprint of Roman power that would endure for another 400 years. History remembers Augustus for glory, but it was Tiberius who ensured that glory would not fade. Dear viewers, thank you all for watching our 3rd episode. The 4th episode will be uploaded very soon. Please stay tuned, subscribe, like, comment, and share to encourage us.